Hello and welcome back to the second episode of the Day of the Red Tinted Glasses podcast. Apologies for the little quality issues potentially on this episode tonight. I feel like Jimmy Thelin. I'm working with what I've got. The Wi-Fi is currently down, so I'm on 5G on the phone. So if there's a bit of seasickness with the movement of the camera, I also apologise. I also feel like Jimmy Thelin as well when he says this Aberdeen team are acting like a bunch of individuals, because those of you watching here on YouTube will see that I am on my own. Both Callum and Phil unable to join me tonight. But I'm glad some of you are joining me tonight as we look back at last night's 5-1 humbling by Celtic. I'll relay some of my thoughts on the game last night, and we'll also take a look ahead to that trip to Tannadice in what feels very important going into this weekend, a game which we must get something from just to build confidence, but also avoid defeat to avoid finishing any lower than fourth. I guess in the first 90 seconds, if you're looking for a silver lining from last night, is of course European football has been confirmed by St Mirren failing to beat Hibs, despite them coming back from 2 goals down to draw 2-2. European football has been confirmed for the Dons for next season. In what form that European football remains to be seen, of course, decided by the outcome of Sunday's game. But really, that felt the bare minimum that should be achieved given the start that we had to this season, and not really much to celebrate on last night, especially given the performance and more so the result as well. Going by the title of the episode, as I've said, Don's dismantled by a second string Celtic side. That Celtic side came to Pittodrie, Brendan Rodgers making 8 changes, whereas Jimmy Thelin very much looked like he was going for his starting 11 for that cup final in 10 days' time. I think for me, the concerning thing on that, we discussed it, myself and Phil, and those of you that joined us in the comments on the last live, whether we would show our hand. If we've shown our hand in sort of team lineup, then fair play, but hopefully we've not showed our hand in terms of performance. But as James Duncan said to me last night, he said, why did it take for us to fold before we brought on 2 jacks? So a wee poker reference there for anyone that likes that. I think back to last night and the way we started the game. I don't know about anybody else on the episode tonight, that certainly when I saw the team lineups, I was encouraged by the Aberdeen team. I thought we went with the strongest team that we had. I didn't mind Pape even being in there, offered us a bit of height and a bit of physicality. Obviously, we saw that with the Rio Hatate challenge a little bit later on. I'll come on to his miss a little bit later, but unfortunately with that Celtic team, the way it lined up maybe gave us all a little bit of false hope, seeing the changes, but that is a difficult Celtic team to break into. So unfortunately, Brendan Rodgers has got them playing as a motivated bunch, and despite making the changes, they were by and large the better team for pretty much throughout. I thought we recovered well after the medical emergency that took place, and hopefully the fan that took ill during the game is making a good recovery. And I thought we also kind of held our own for a small period, of 5 minutes in the second half as well. Unfortunately, once Celtic got their quick fire goals, that was game over. I think the biggest disappointment from last night, however, has to be again the question marks around the performance, but more so the mentality of this team. You could say we showed a bit of fight in us to come back and equalise after going 1-0 down. Again, question marks will be asked, I'm sure, by many. Certainly would have been asked by Phil if he was here tonight, on conceding yet again from a set piece, zonal marking. Topi Keskinen, he's not exactly known for his height, but picking up a centre back who outmuscled him extremely well to head home Naroki. And yeah, as I said, we got ourselves back into the game, but I can't remember if it was at 0-0 or 1-0, but how the hell's Pape Gay not scoring that header? I think most of Pittodrie was already celebrating, but I haven't even watched it back to see if it's come off his shoulder. But a very tame effort indeed. He does redeem himself with that ball into the box for Kevin Nisbet to head home and install a bit of life into the crowd, and get us going again, but given the medical emergency that took place, there was a fair chunk of added time in that first half. And yet again, I don't even think we shoot ourselves in the foot, but we concede at the wrong time. And not only did I feel that goal took the stuffing out of the players, it took the stuffing right out of the crowd as well. I think had we gone into half-time at 1-1, Jimmy Thelin would have been able to get into the players some words of encouragement that they'd hung on. And it might even have offered us as fans a little bit of encouragement as well, that, okay, not being at our best, but we've taken our chance. We've been clinical when we needed to be, and hopefully we could have built on that for the second half as well. Unfortunately, James Forrest had Graham Shinnie on toast all that first half, and actually had our whole team on toast. Who knew that he could roll back the years just like that? I suppose those of you that were in attendance or watching the game as well will potentially have concerns over Graham Shinnie based on that performance and how easily James Forrest skipped by him. Of course, you've got Nicholas Cooner, Dyson Maeda to return for the final. What success will they have against Graham Shinnie? Does Jimmy Thelin maybe look at Jack McKenzie? Does he maybe look at moving Alexander Jensen over to left back with Nicky Devlin coming in to right back? We've seen Nicky Devlin get minutes in recent weeks. These are selection headaches that I'm sure Jimmy Thelin will need to think long and hard about, not just for Sunday's game at Tannadice, but also that cup final, which I'm sure now comes with a lot more dread on the back of last night as well, if it didn't already. As I said, the manner of that goal, I thought Jensen does well. Probably a penalty, actually, if it's not steered home. I think it's a handball. But yeah, just a really kind of poor goal to concede. But unfortunately, we get cold yet again at the start of the second half, and Celtic come out all guns blazing and really put us to the sword in that opening exchanges, despite a brief kind of showing of interest from Aberdeen. But yeah, the quick fire goals yet again just killed the game as a contest and killed the interest, I suppose, for many in that Pittodrie crowd, including myself. Not all of us are as faithful as some and staying to the very bitter end, but congratulations to all of you that did stay and probably had to fight off the seagulls on your way out as well, judging by what I saw in the coverage by the time I'd made it home. Alfie Donington, of course, picking up 2 bookings and now seeing himself suspended for that game at Tannadice, so at least somebody's going to get rested ahead of that cup final. So well done, Alfie, on that. At least that doesn't carry through to the cup final. It's also, I guess, disappointing now that we've got to go to Tannadice knowing that we need to avoid defeat to secure 4th place in the league as well, because if we'd even got a point yesterday based off a Dundee United result, we could have looked to rest or rotate the luxury that Celtic showed in Wednesday, and maybe that was something that Brendan Rodgers was flexing in making those changes. And again, obviously, as we've discussed, putting us to the sword. But I guess the biggest question many will have, based on last night as well, is where do we go from here in terms of this squad's mentality? People are rightly going to question Jimmy Thelin. I'm not there yet. I think he deserves the summer to have that 3 transfer window cycle within his period and see what he can bring in, rebuild if you want. He's very stubborn. I think we can all agree on that. He's very fixed on one system. Certainly what I would like to see from Jimmy over the summer is a work on a plan B. We announced the signing of Nicholas Milanovic from Western Sydney Wanderers today. For those of you that are maybe new to the channel or not tried to watch or listen to any Don's content yet, we were joined by Alan McCarley from Sydney, a Western Sydney Wanderers season ticket holder. So he gave us the down low. So if you want a bit more positivity after listening to my dull tones, you can hear from Alan and his thoughts on the new signing and what he'll hopefully bring. And maybe Nicholas will be a bit of a plan B, or maybe go into Plan A and be a starter as well. But certainly that is extremely concerning. But for me, the biggest concern is the mental weakness, and that's not a Jimmy Thelin problem. That's been a problem throughout this team, right out, under Barry Robson. We saw it under Neil Warnock, and even before then as well. This team struggles when their backs are against the walls. And, I said in my fan piece for the BBC, I didn't want to see the manager or the players coming out and having a go and saying, they're going to say, we know what we did wrong at Ibrox, we'll correct it against Celtic. Because when have we ever seen that, come to fruition? I think that's now 30 games against Celtic without a win. I think it's 16 years, if not longer, since a home clean sheet against them. It's just diabolical. And I'm not even meaning against Celtic. We saw it at Ibrox as well. Keep conceding goals in quick succession. I think a few of you have also commented on the fact that even this season, it's the manner in which when we concede a second very quickly after, if not in 5 minutes, maybe 10 as well. The heads go down again, as I said at the top of the show. I'm here as an individual tonight with the absence of Phil and Callum. The team start playing as individuals when we go 1-0 down. Nobody's grabbing the game by the scruff of the neck, and they're not pulling together. The heads very much go down, and that's a real concern, especially for the final. If Celtic score early, we could be on for something a little bit horrible there. Let's hope that's not the case. And again, I mentioned it previously on a previous episode that Stewie Walker is very much clinging on to 2017. I know it didn't end in the right way that we wanted to, but we didn't exactly turn up against Celtic in the games prior to that cup final and ran them very close. But I even feel that hope is very much kind of clutching at straws. I think the other thing, again, based on if we look at that team from last night and think, will that be the team that faces Celtic in the final? I don't know if anybody watching has any thoughts on what changes they would like to see. No, you're not allowed to change the full starting 11, as much as many of you, I'm sure, would like. In one of my group chats today, the question around, should Jamie McGrath come into that team, because he's one of the most creative players that we've currently got. It's his final appearance for the club. We saw what happened last time when a few players were on their final appearances in the cup final. Johnny Hay scored that opener. I guess the other question for me, if you're bringing in Jamie McGrath, I would be bringing him in for Shayden Morris. Again, I thought last night, I'm not singling Shayden out in particular, but I thought his defensive duties were lacking. But I thought the whole team were lacking in various departments, so it was extremely disappointing throughout. Pape, whilst being physical, and I think the best thing he did was, I think he wins a 50-50 that Rio Hatate shirks out of. It could be a blessing if Rio Hatate is injured. For that cup final, he puts himself about and he does offer us an out ball. And as I said, that physicality, which we know Celtic do not like. Brendan Rodgers clearly doesn't like either. So if we can rattle Celtic in that manner, Pape can play. But I would already kind of be looking at Dante Polvara and having that option of flooding the midfield. Putting 5 in midfield. Jamie McGrath can kind of move forward to support Kevin Nisbet if needed, or can be playing out on the wing. But if we go for 5 across the midfield, we can then support the defence in a better manner than certainly we did last night. Graham Shinney far too exposed at times. Alexander Jensen, I thought was fine. I know he's come in for a little bit of criticism from last night. I don't really see where that's coming from as well. Scott M saying that we should go for a 5-4-1 in the final. I even agree with that. 5-4-1 when defending and 3-4-3 when attacking. It's a good idea because it offers us that option to sit in and stifle Celtic, but kind of possibly play to our strengths when we're attacking as well. And I think the real disappointing thing from last night was having to agree with Peter Grant when driving home that Celtic didn't have to work for that victory last night. And certainly for those of a certain age, older than me, that's for sure, because I can't remember the last time. Actually, no, I do remember the last time I think that we beat Celtic would have been when Stuart Duff scored. 4-2 win under Mark McGee at Pittodrie. Celtic haven't had to work for a victory at Pittodrie in recent times, and to be honest, they haven't had to work for many victories against us in recent times. We need to make Celtic work for a victory if that's what they're going to have in that Scottish Cup final, but we need to show enough about ourselves to show that we can at least compete in that cup final, because unfortunately in certain games against Celtic this season we haven't shown, actually probably ever since the draw in the 1-0 at Pittodrie, we haven't competed against Celtic, and it's not good enough for a club that wants to be challenging at the top end of the table, which we did at the start of the season, and we were pushing Celtic despite horrifically falling away. We were pushing Celtic, yes, riding our luck, we can all admit that now, but we haven't performed in games against them, bar for me really that 2-2 at Parkhead and 1-0 defeat at Pittodrie. Where does this leave us, though, I suppose, in terms of the league campaign? Some of you are probably asking. I think if we're all being brutally honest with ourselves, at the start of the season, new manager, new to Scottish football, new group of players, some also new to Scottish football, if you'd offered us 4th place, a Scottish Cup final and a League Cup semi-final, let's be honest, we'd have all bitten your hand off. I mean, we can sit here now and say, as I'm going to, it feels a disappointing end to the campaign, but it's disappointing because of the start that we had to the season. It's disappointing because we put ourselves in a position that we shouldn't have thrown away. I think, I can't remember who it was. I don't know if it was Paul Cooler or not. I know who listens to this podcast, but there was a tweet I saw earlier in the day where it said we possibly overachieved in the first third of the season, underachieved in the second third, and have probably performed to where we expect to be in the final third. And I actually think, that is a pretty fair assessment of the season as a whole, but I can't begrudge anyone feeling disappointed because of the way we started. Kaiser's one of them, saying 4th is poor, especially when we're 40 points behind Celtic. I know a lot of people will point to that form table that's been doing the round on social media as well. The fact that based on the form since November, we're bottom of that form table, worse than St Johnstone, having played 2 games more than them. But let's be honest, seasons are played over 37, 38 games. So, as Ebby Scovedale said, stats are like miniskirts, so it depends how you want to dress things up, depends what you get to see. Speaking of Ebby, though, Liam McLeod said that, this season maybe mirrors Ebby Scovedale. Again, that's just slightly before my time, having not lived in Aberdeen until the beginning of the 2002. So, mirroring that, although, I'm pretty sure in Ebby's first season we didn't finish as high as 4th, but, got as far in cups. But it's one of those things, if we win the Scottish Cup, it really feels now our season is hinging on that Scottish Cup final. But also I think a lot is hinging on that 4th place finish. Not only does it mean qualification for the Europa League and then potentially dropping into the Conference League if that doesn't go to plan, it buys Jimmy a little bit of time with that European competition and buys him the opportunity to perform. And we've seen him perform in cup games so far this season. I think the disappointment, as I said already, about that league campaign is, given the strong start we've had, it feels disappointing to even have conceded 3rd to Hibs, especially from where we've been. For me, it's almost inexcusable and unthinkable to concede 5th to a Dundee United team that have very much, like ourselves, are stumbling their way to the finish line of this season in the league as well. So, definitely not one that we want to see, but as I said, a 4th place finish at the start of the season, I think many of us would have bitten your hand off for. And if we can return to Aberdeen with some silverware in 10 days' time, we're definitely not going to be complaining, are we? If we look ahead briefly then to that trip to Tannadice, said Alfie Dorrington's now going to miss that game through suspension, I'm pretty sure, with the 2 bookings and picking up the red card, which will see a likely return for Christers Tobers to the centre of defence. What I'm interested to see is how Jimmy Thelin maybe changes things in that front three. We saw Ibrox and giving Obde Dabag minutes over Kevin Nisbet. Personally, I would like to see Kevin Nisbet continue in that leading the line. Happy enough with Topi Keskinen continuing on the left. Would I be happy seeing Jamie McGrath start the game on Saturday? Probably. I feel almost Shayden Morris could do with a rest ahead of that cup final. I know a few of you are going to say they're professional football players. They're going to have a week after Saturday to prepare for the cup final. But I know Steve Tosh might even have a couple of comments to make on this about the build-up to cup finals and, you know, what that's like with the media duties, the press, and dealing with all that comes, the nerves, the anticipation, the excitement. Maybe some players won't sleep as well. Maybe some players will be thinking too far ahead. So really interested to kind of see how Jimmy approaches the game. Also, I guess how Jim Goodwin approaches the game, because the Dundee United fans certainly haven't been happy with, you know, their end to the season as well. But what an opportunity to get one up on their other rivals outside the city, because they certainly have that feeling towards us. Obviously, a lesser crowd given the 1,000 restriction on the away end, but I'm sure another sellout. So the Dons will be noisily backed, despite the 12:30 kickoff. I just hope that they're actually rewarded with something, not only to cheer about, but us as a whole are rewarded with something to hold on to. It really feels going to Hampden, because it feels like we're going into that cup final right now on a whimper just now, and we do need a little bit of positivity. And I would like to see at least a couple of goals as well. Do I think they're coming right now? No. I feel we're going to stumble over the line into fourth. I do think we will do the job. Kaiser, I know you're not as confident, you know, stating that we've got a loser mentality. It's hard to disagree with that loser mentality comment based on what we've seen over the last couple of games and in the way we've conceded. I think Ian Crocker said as well that that's now 18 goals we've conceded to Celtic, which is kind of concerning again in that matter. I suppose the other concerning thing looking ahead to Saturday is our away form. Me and Phil spoke about it on the last episode, but as Liam McLeod noted last night, we've only picked up 2 points to teams within the top 6, and one of those points was back in October, as I've already mentioned, that draw at Parkhead. So given our poor away record right now, I'd bite your hand off for a draw and just finish above Dundee United. Finish fourth, no injuries, scrappy 0-0 even, and see ourselves through to the cup final and try and get ourselves up for that and motivated. And I'm going to be joined by Phil on Monday to review the action from the weekend, and we'll definitely do that together. And then shaping up, of course, trying to build some anticipation and excitement on the podcast. We'll have a dedicated episode on Wednesday to that cup final live here on the Red Tinted Glasses YouTube channel as well, hopefully with a couple of special guests lined up as well in the build up to try and get some excitement for that. And of course, those in Aberdeen will know that the city are trying to get businesses involved and people involved to wear red this next week coming now, to really try and build any sort of excitement that I'm sure many of you are maybe struggling with at this point, but certainly something I'm sure as the week progresses may build, potentially result dependent this weekend as well. We've just got to try and keep the faith, because, as I said, the tough points, yes, they feel low, but those highs will become even sweeter, and hopefully we get a taste of one of them on the 24th of May. But a really important game, as I said, not just for fourth and where we land in Europe this weekend, but also just to give ourselves, players, fans alike, confidence and momentum into the weekend and the build up to that Scottish Cup final as well. I think that's really all I've got to say. I don't really want to spend too much time speaking back about the weekend and the weekend last night and the disappointment that was. Hopefully when Phil rejoins me next week, we've got something positive to speak about, not just on on Monday night, but also on Wednesday as well, looking ahead with that special. So if you do want to join us for those episodes, we would really appreciate it. I will say thank you to those that are supporting the channel here on YouTube as well. I did ask if we could get to 2,250 subscribers before the cup final. We've surpassed that. So a big thank you to those of you that continue to support the channel here on YouTube and on audio as well. Until next time, thank you very much.